Okay, hello and welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to this channel. What up, y'all? Hopefully, you're doing very, very well. I am having a freaking day right now, but everything is fine. Everything is cool. Also, I accidentally made this live in the in another what's called a studio in StreamYard, so I don't have my little opening notes and whatnot, but I do remember them since I go live so often to a little bit of a degree. So I'll try to get through them as smooth as possible. But just bear with me. Just be a little kind today. Here we go, and we shall get through this together. Now, in those little opening notes, I do ask that you please like the video, subscribe to the channels, and come back often, check on us, see how we doing, see if you align more or less maybe with what we got going on. If you are here on this channel, then you are in for some real conversations. We talk about money, we talk about the inner storyteller, obviously, we talk about religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the great. We talk about anarchy, we talk about how the human population is manipulated, and the stories that we tell ourselves that make that a possibility and a reality, and how those stories interact and relate to our behaviors as an aggregate, as the aggregate of the human family. And If conversations and discussions regarding those things makes you a little uneasy, you are definitely encouraged to stay, but you are welcome to leave as soon as you like the video. You can like the video on your way out. Other than that, I'm very excited to kind of get into today's topic, which is word magic and the dark occult influence on the inner storyteller. And I'm kind of going to just jump right in because, well, there's a few different reasons. I wonder if I can, my settings. I just need to put something in dark mode. Aha! There we go. Okay, and then I'll just kind of close the settings. Just like go back to the chat here. Here we go. I'm just gonna kind of go, and I like I said, I'm having a day. Okay, I prepared these notes far in advance, and I had planned to be home at least 3 hours earlier, but I was fine with getting home a little bit later than that. But I was not planning on going live after 8 p.m. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. I did not leave myself enough time to deal with this and to, edit and personalize the notes that I came up with. So I'm going to be looking down probably a lot more to try to just get through the episode and get through the material. But it is very powerful material, and is something that you should take absolutely seriously or sincerely as you listen to it and try to relate to it in your life. This episode, we are talking directly about religion, and I don't just mean faith traditions that come out of the Abrahamic or the Taoist philosophies. Okay, I mean we are talking about religion as a function within the human psyche. Okay, when we become religious about something, it means that we've created a mental operating system of collective belief because these other people believe it and believe it with conviction. It's true. Without proof, without real logic applied, I believe it and I'm running with it. Not only am I running with it, but I dress like I run with it, and I speak like I run. The terminology that I use, I run with it. I get nervous when words from other religious philosophies are used around me. I start to get squirmish and things because my belief system, my uh, foundation says that if those words are being used around me, then I'm around the presence of something very, very bad. We're talking about that. We're talking about religion, religious rigidity, religious rigid skepticism, um, all of that, because it's very important to not get lost and trapped in religion and make yourself unable to have regular discussions and to have real discussions. So one thing that got to keep in mind is we are not bashing faith systems on this channel. When we talk about religion, we are not calling people stupid for having a religion or a faith system. We are simply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most stake in and the most faith in, and what they do to us over time, and what we do with them over time. We are also examining the psychological mechanism that makes certain words trigger a shutdown before any real examination of a concept can occur. Okay. How we don't allow ourselves enough open mindedness to even be of integrity in discussions. And that's what we're doing today. So, the thesis or central theme in one sentence of today's topic is the social engineers, okay? Parasite class at the top of the food chain and at the top of the money system and religion system, organized religion system. The social engineers did not create the vulnerability that we're going to discuss today. They simply found that it was already running inside us and they weaponized it. And that vulnerability is the inner storyteller. Okay. And it becomes a vulnerability when we're not hip to their game. There is a mechanism inside each and every human being that protects the stories it has the most faith in. It does not ask permission to protect said stories, whether or not said stories are true. It does not check with logic. It does not check with experience. It simply does not wait for you to decide and closes the door on anything that contradicts the story it is protecting in any way. And the people who run this world, who fund this world, and who create the mental, the let's just say who create the prisons for our minds and for our bodies, the order giver class, they didn't build that mechanism, the inner storyteller, within us. Okay. They found it to be real. They found it to be predictable, and thereby found us to be vulnerable to psychological warfare, and found out before we did how far they can take that game. And they've been using this mechanism, the inner storyteller, ever since, very effectively every single day through symbols, propaganda, poison, and other means. Today we have a name for it. Okay, their means of attack. And I'm going to refer to it as word magic. Okay, word magic, not in the cartoonish sense, but in the authentic, real sense, where if I use word association to make you believe that something is good that is bad and something is bad that is good, then I've employed word magic, whether or not I'm successful. And speaking of whether or not they are successful in the use of their word magic, the fortunate thing for us in the 99%, in the not so satanic population, not so dark occult population, is once you see it, you can't unsee it. So buckle in, okay? Put on your hard hats and let's kind of get right into it. So word magic is not obviously an official academic scientific term. Okay. It's what I call the social engineer's deliberate manipulation of word association to control the categorizing and sorting function of the inner storyteller, which again gives meaning to our experiences, and to our stories. Okay, the stories that run give the meaning to our life experience and to what we're learning in our thoughts. And the word association, the word magic is just what I call the tool that they use. And it works on a simple principle, which is the truth is never small enough to fit into words. Okay. The truth is never, small enough is kind of the best way to put it. The truth can never be boxed by words. All right. That's why the more grandiose, the closer you get to talking about the very, very big, or even, God, these all-encompassing concept, the closer you get to trying to actually put the truth into words, the harder it is to remain consistent and not contradict yourself in some way, shape, or form. Every word is a bit of a container for its definitions, even if there's multiple. And the engineers, social engineers, the bad sorcerers of this place, control which containers get associated in the masses, in the minds of the masses, with which emotions. Okay. They also control which containers get associated with memory, and like memories, individual memories, memories of big traumatic events, memories of individual events. Okay. And which containers get associated with conformity, with loyalty, right? Loyalties. So, for instance, ideology, right? Ideology, if you speak to a deeply religious thinker, is like a dirty word, right? Because the sort of clean side of ideology in the mind of many religionists is faith. But obviously, if you relax a little bit, ideology and faith are the same thing. Any ideology you hold is a faith system that you're operating by. Any faith that you hold is an ideology that can be picked apart and looked at with scrutiny and tested. Okay. And if it doesn't pass enough tests, somebody might have legitimate reason to not believe you when you say that they should also follow the same religion. And this is something that a lot of religionists, for some reason, cannot get through their skull, cannot understand, or cannot accept out loud. So ideology is a dirty word, right? And faith is a good one. A framework of beliefs operating below the level of conscious examination fits the definition of both faith and ideology. And the word determines which drawer it's filed into in the mind. Okay. And the drawer determines whether it gets examined when it's brought up in discussion, especially when there's a disagreement. So basically, what I'm saying is once a word is successfully associated with some sort of danger, contamination, or like heresy, right? Blasphemy. One second. You know what? Y'all, everybody say what's up to Malik. Okay. Say what's up in the comments. What's up, brother? Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Well, we'll figure it out. I'm doing my thing. I'll talk to you. All right. Some examples that I pulled up earlier and whatnot that really speak to how in the aggregate, especially in the United States, we are used to this concept playing out. The word anarchy. The word anarchy directly triggers the image of chaos and violence and raggedy clothes and theft. And, the concept points at the natural state of self-governance, which is every waking moment of everybody's life, unless and until enforcement from tyranny interrupts the natural state and introduces coercion into, a space and a circumstance that coercion was absent from for the moment. But self-governance and anarchy, even though they are the same in content, the word anarchy and the phrase self-governance have different containers. And therefore, a completely different response from the inner storyteller, which drives the behavior and influences our behavior. The word karma. Okay, the word karma carries the weight of like Eastern religions and Eastern traditions on one hand, as well as New Age movement, Americanized Eastern concepts for the Western, especially Christian audience, but as well as the Muslim. Anybody coming from the Abrahamic might look at the word karma the same way. One concept points to a cause and effect on a moral level relationship between our actions and the responses from God or from our environment that we experience, which is identical to what most Christians call reaping what you sow. You do reap what you sow. You do experience a karmic response to the moral weight of your choices. This is true, and this is extremely well documented, scientifically tested over and over again, and it passes the test every single time without fail. But same thing, the word karma versus the phrase reap what you sow, same content, different container. And every now and again, when you're speaking with a deeply indoctrinated, deeply dogmatic religionist, the word karma has them react in such a way that they will shut down the conversation. Okay. Natural law, short phrase. This phrase sounds like physics, the law of gravity or magnetism, to a secular audience. To a religious audience, it may sound like something that competes with the gospel, right? Something that competes with divine law, natural law. It isn't, right? It's but because the phrase is the container triggers the sorting function of the inner storyteller, and therefore its content can be evaluated completely differently from the same exact function, set of laws in the universe or set of observable, laws that make up the world. If said in religious terminology, you point to the same thing, you say somebody says natural law and somebody says whatever the religious terminology is, and it gets sorted completely differently and associated completely differently in the mind due to the propaganda coming from the religious side of things. Whether that religion is just the religion of listening to your television, or the religion is the actual priest class of your faith system. And here's the thing to remember. The truth, again, is never small enough to actually fit into our words. Therefore, when you speak about deep truth, you do have to logically lead somebody into a space where your words can no longer go with you, and you're just nodding and they get it, and then you move on to something else. Okay? And that's what makes something in us vulnerable. Right? Now, word magic doesn't just create believers in a particular belief system. It creates rigid skeptics on the other side, people who are deeply suspicious of certain words. And often because those words have been successfully associated with the enemy and the um, adversary, right? The accuser, um, and foolishness. What the religionists may see when they encounter such words, regardless of who's saying them, what the context is, how organically it may have come up in the conversation or discussion that you're having, it will be associated with spiritual danger. And that, good friends, is a problem, a big one. The rigid skepticism is on the other side of the coin of blind faith. And blind faith is not an educated or healthy mechanism of the mind. Okay. Blind faith is dangerous spiritually, in my humble opinion. Now, both things, rigid skepticism and blind faith, are just the manifestations of the inner storyteller protecting the story that it has the most faith in, or the stories that you're living by. And both close the door on inconvenient truths or conversations regarding inconvenient facts before the concept inside the container can really be examined to see if we can broaden our opinions on things. But what we forget in all of this is that this is by design. When we are reflecting on our own behavior and realizing, like, dang, yeah, there was a lot of conversations I had that if I was just a little more open to what they were saying, I could have learned something. Even if it didn't change my mind, I could have learned something about myself and about the world and about the truth by not shutting down. We forget that the reason that we shut down so much is by design. Okay. If you can make people who are waking up deeply allergic to the vocabulary attached to truth, the truth that does not belong to a religion, but the truth as truth is, okay, then you can slow the awakening of the planet almost infinitely without ever engaging the content directly. So what we are left with is this notion that, and I'm going to actually see if I have a picture. Yes, I do. Okay. What we are left with is the notion that our minds are operating similar to a computer system. Of course, I'm not saying that the human mind is the same exact thing as a computer, but it's very computer-like. I'm going to read something from Mark Passio's, a few of Mark Passio's presentation regarding human nature. Okay, human nature. And he says human nature is, we are a programmable species. Okay, not that human beings are inherently good, not that human beings are inherently evil, but that we can do actions that are good, we can do actions that are evil, and whether or not we should be determined as that was a good person or that was a bad person after death is actually how we were programmed up here. That's what's most important, is our automated and automatic responses, okay, that our choices largely influence, leading us to consistently make bad choices or make good choices, make harmful choices or make choices that do not initiate harm against the innocent. Okay. So he says, human beings are programmable, much like computers. Like a computer, not the same, but like a computer, if a human being has a bad file system format, which are like the conditions during a child's formative years, right? And has a bad operating system, the culture and the environment in which you grow up and in which you live your life. as well as bad software programs, erroneous and rigid dogmatic beliefs. You believe this because this is what you're supposed to believe. You say this and avoid these other words because this is what you're supposed to say, and these are the words you're never supposed to use. Then their output, okay, or the behavior that they do, the choices that they make in real life actions that they engage in on the screen of life will also be bad. So again, if the file system format is bad, the operating system is bad, and the software in it is bad, then the screen will never give you what you're asking for. It will never give you what you intend to display. If our childhood, if our formative years were filled with trash, and our culture is filled with trash, and our beliefs, our internal choices about what we believe is true and what we hold on to and what we live by is all bad, then our behavior will be bad because natural law dictates it. So you and it's just logical, okay? And the behaviors will contribute to the deterioration of the human condition on a mass scale. Like a computer, the behavior of a human being will largely depend upon its programming. The quality of the information put into it, which enables it to process and create effectively. Simply put, a human being is programmable, garbage in, garbage out, gold in, gold out, or anything shiny and good in and shiny and good out. Love in, love out, garbage in, garbage out. Okay? This is a universal principle that's very important to understand as we move forward. And within this filing system metaphor, the inner storyteller runs a major sorting function, which again, association function. Okay? Everything that comes in gets filed. This goes here, that goes there. Never place these two things in the same drawer, right? This sorting function is not random. It's trained by your choices and the environment. And, repeat, like repetition, what's repeated a bunch in your life. School, family, church, media, all of these things teach the inner storyteller which drawer or file, cabinet to place which definition, which word, which discussions in, and which people in thereby, right? What's sacred, what's suspicious, what's off limits. The problem is not that we sort. The problem is that the sorting happens before the examination. Okay, the sorting happens at the speed of thought, which is exponentially faster than the speed of light, because light travels through space, whereas thought instantly manifests from the unseen to the seen. It's an instantaneous thing. And the drawer closes before we've looked at what's inside. Okay, as soon as our brain processes that a what is, something has happened, or something is over there, or something is right in front of me, or something, a what took place or is taking place, then that what is sorted before we examine what the what is, what it could mean, and weigh options. It's sorted immediately and instantaneously. And so how the engineers exploit this very, natural process is that the social engineers understand the sorting function better than we do and use that gap in knowledge against us, which is what my work is all about, understanding this function. They don't just control information. Okay, they control the containers that information gets sorted into, pardon me. And this is what you've been calling religion. Any system of belief that operates through containers and rituals and this sorting mechanism Rather than direct examination, careful, non-rigid scrutiny, and patience, right? Not being hasty to jump to a conclusion, is a religion. Government is a religion. Money is a religion. The school system is a religion, right? Um, Ideology is like what the school system does, right? Faith is what the church does. That's how the sorting thing works. Ideology is what the lefties do, but faith is what the right people on the right do, right? That's the sorting. It's not true, or it's not really different. Ideology and faith are the same exact thing, but word magic. One has a connotation that's different than the other. And so we have to talk about how this creates the option for us to develop coping mechanisms like scapegoating and other coping mechanisms in the face of discussions that contradict our beliefs. One of the most powerful tools in the sorting function is the pre-built explanation, or what I call a scapegoat, the justification for believing something without any proof, testing, or real logic applied. When inconvenient information arrives into the function, the framework of the scapegoat provides a container that absorbs the challenge of dealing with contradictory information without requiring examination or reflection in any meaningful way. For instance, in having a conversation recently with religionists, I was told that Satan, corrupted the text, and the messenger, the person giving a certain message that sounded contradictory to what they believe, is just spiritually deceived, but without any explanation as to what exactly they were wrong about in anything that they actually said. And that, certain words that they were using when they said it come from different faith system, therefore can't apply to the real world, which only Christian gospel applies to. Only Christian gospel applies to the real world, and everything else is just some sort of corrupted text that Satan messed with. This is called scapegoating, right? Satan is the scapegoat. Satan, you can just point to Satan and say, nope, you burning sage in your house, Palo Santo? You trying to cleanse your space with some sort of ritual that didn't come out of my religious text? Satan gave that to the world, and if that worked for anybody, it's because Satan let it work for them so that he could spread his influence, right? Scapegoating makes no sense. You say it with no proof. That you're mad at them for burning sage when they have no proof that it works that you would believe, and yet you use scapegoating, which comes with no proof, to say that they're doing something wrong. The scapegoat is not laziness, by the way, and there is no offense intended in what I'm saying. The scapegoat function is the inner storyteller doing exactly what it is naturally developed to do, which is to protect the stories that we have the most faith in, the most emotional stake in, and that we invest the most amount of our identity into. And it's also why the most defended beliefs are almost never the beliefs that are most examined. Okay, they're the ones that are least examined and the ones that require the most childlike faith. The inner storyteller does not protect the ideas that it doesn't need to protect. It protects the ones that it can't afford to lose and that are vulnerable to changing with new information and scrutiny. Now, one thing that happened in real life for me was I was recently in a conversation with someone who I genuinely respect, who is intelligent, who is awake to a lot of things, who is courageous in a lot of ways, who spreads love in a lot of ways. And we were deep into some real discussion about government, school, um, and freedom. And all of it was clicking, all of it was building. And then a word landed into the conversation. One word. Okay. And I watched closely and intentionally body posture, tone of voice, energy levels, and anxiety levels shift drastically, quickly, and almost without any recovery until the very, very end. Um, Not in great argument, thrown at me, but just in the withdrawal, in the posture change. And a decision was made somewhere below conscious thought that the conversation had to be, made private because I don't really have an audience or whatever. And the word that was used indeed was karma. Okay. And in the conversation, I explained, well, I say these things, but karma, the way I use it is just a word. Karma is a word that points to something that is real, verifiable, and verified billions of times by billions of people. Okay. You reap what you sow is the biblical version of the same word, biblical phrase representing the same concept. But something was very rigid. Something couldn't get over their dogmatic beliefs and engage with the idea. Now, I was not using karma as an invitation to expand, for them to expand beyond their belief system into a different, excuse me, beyond their religion into a different religion. I was using it to describe something observable. The universe responds to your behavior, specifically to the moral weight of your choices, right? And it didn't go over well with me using that word. In fact, for the majority until the very end, when there was some recovery of the conversation from that point, was, I was being asked certain questions. And when I would answer the questions in a way that maybe circled back to my use of the word karma or the concept thereof, um, there was some dishonesty, right, from the other person. There was some just rigid, like, I'm not really going to engage with that. I'm just going to, kind of respond with, well, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this, and I'm not going to engage in the way that I just was engaging with you when we weren't talking about religion and we were talking about school and stuff, and government and freedom, with directly with what you said. I'm only going to engage in a way that I say what I believe after you say what you believe. We're not going to argue, but that's all you're going to get from me, right? And that's unfortunate, when that happens, because it's like, oh man, one party is um, remaining open, and the other party gets very closed off, uh, and they're not able to continue, even though it's in good faith. They're not able to continue on good terms in a way. One of the things I said is if we do have common ground and we have a shared objective, like more freedom in the world that we're working towards, but we have different means of going about it, then I just let you go about it differently and you can meet me at the finish line and we can shake hands. But this was taken to mean all faith systems lead to the same heaven. Um, so, there was some discussion that it just, yeah, it didn't. I would say something and the response would show that they were taking it as if I meant something completely different. And to kind of, I guess, close this up, I just want to remind everybody that religion is any system that operates through containers, rituals, and sorting rules that direct, rather than direct examination. But religion is not the enemy. Okay, it's the mechanism through which the dark occult influences the world and keeps people separate from each other, keeps people so divided that we can't even hear each other because we're worried about the terminology that each of us are using when we're discussing what we need to do to change the world and make it a better place for our children. The enemy, the actual enemy, is whoever figured out how to write the labels on the drawers in your mind for your sorting before you were old enough to ask what's inside of it and how it works. Therefore, in my opinion, and how we look at it on this channel, the inner storyteller is the main battleground of the human experience on Earth right now, and probably always has been. Okay, because the work is not to destroy the inner storyteller. The work is to master one's self. You need the inner storyteller because it gives meaning to your experiences. It's the only way to have an inner experience is to experience the story of something happening. The real work is to occasionally open the drawers in your mind and look at what's actually there. Okay. We often weren't ready for the technological advancement that we were given by mass distribution. But readiness is not a fixed state, it's a direction. And the direction can be headed towards if we better understand ourselves as we attempt to take steps toward getting there. Okay. Or towards aligning with that direction, pardon me, because it's not a destination either. Well, that's pretty much all I have for you today in my notes. Please like the video and subscribe to channels, y'all. I hope that this was helpful and useful for you guys. I do hope I will revisit this, and I'll probably take these notes, rewatch this episode, see what I didn't cover in the detail that I wanted to get, that I wanted to do when I do my thing. And I might like make some slides and some visuals to kind of go with it, so it's not a complete retell. And I'll do this episode, or I'll do another episode similar to this one again, because it's really important to understand what makes us disagree with rigid skepticism versus, what makes us disagree but remain open enough to at least hear legitimately where the other person is coming from. So if you're new to this, this show is about natural law. We talk about religion, good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, we talk about anarchy, culture, and how mankind is manipulated by forces that do not have our best interests at heart. Again, we are not bashing faith systems or shaming people for having them. We are examining the psychological cause and effect, as well as the affects of the stories that we have the most faith in, and what these stories are doing to us. Okay. How they affect the current human condition, what we can do about the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery. And understanding the inner storyteller is understanding the mechanism that makes us obey slave masters in our day-to-day lives. And other than that, I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Today is Saturday, so there will be no episode tomorrow, but there will be an episode again on Monday. Cool. Nice. And I'll see you then. Peace and love.